Good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight for tonight's Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration. Let me say first off, I'd like you to rise if you can and follow with me through the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities that are laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Thank you. Be seated. Our Deputy Clerk has the roll call, I understand. Could I ask members of the committee if anyone has a declaration of pecuniary interest to express tonight? Seeing none, we'll forge ahead. I should tell those of you watching that between the mayor and I, we're going to confuse you several times tonight as we switch chairs throughout the evening. He'll be in the chair for the planning hearing and back in the chair for two resolutions that I'll bring at the end of the evening.
I'd keep that singular, please, the confusion.
Sorry, Mayor, you'll have to speak into my good ear.
Just ignore me.
So we have a separation with respect to 7.17, proposed amendments to the Chapter 206 Animal Control. That one is separated because we have a delegation. I don't see any other requests for separation from committee members. So could I ask Councillor Martin to bring the motion to approve all items for consideration consent, 7.1s and 7.2s that are not separated for discussion? And let me know who your seconder is, please.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Wall, that items for consideration and consent, items 7.1 and 7.2, not separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
Councillor, thank you kindly. I'll ask the clerk now to go to the vote on the remainder.
All items not separated for discussion purposes carries unanimously on recorded vote of 11-0. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Mayor Davis, Councillor Vanderstout, Sless, Marn, Nantoski, Wall, Van Tilborg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Sakola. The following items were subject to the vote. Item 7.1.1, proposed budget timeline revisions for cost shared services in an election year. Item 7.1.2, restricted acts in an election year and temporary delegated authority. Item 7.1.3, service review opportunities, final update. Item 7.1.4, notices of objection to the inclusion of 54 Alfred Street, 126 Darling Street, and 455 Colburn Street on the City of Brantford's Heritage Register as non-designated listed properties. Item 7.1.5, Winfield West Phase 8B subdivision agreement. Item 7.1.6, Heritage Register Project Part 2 Phase D properties recommended for listing. Item 7.1.8, council appointment of property standards officers, municipal law enforcement officers, peace officers, and building inspectors. And item 7.2.1.1, committee of the whole planning and administration, May 10th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Mr. Gauthier, thank you very much. Delegations, we're going to do the planning hearing first, and then we'll have you come to the podium when that's concluded. So Mayor Davis, if you would please take the chair for that.
Thank you, Chair McCreary. So we'll now move into the statutory public hearing portion of this particular meeting under the provisions of the Ontario Planning Act. And the meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of that act. And the purpose of the hearing is to discuss the planning application that's before us tonight and to hear from the public either in support of or in opposition to the application. At the end of the public meeting portion, the committee will pass a recommendation which will generally be considered at a final decision of the next meeting of council, which this month takes place on June the 28th. The name of anyone who speaks in regard to any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing notice of any further proceedings regarding the application should provide their name and address to the clerk's office. The procedure we follow is the applicant, which in this case tonight is the city, will speak first, followed by normally it's municipal staff and then the public. The applicant will then have an opportunity to provide clarification on any questions or issues raised during the meeting. So we have one item before us this evening. It's item 5.1. It's an amendment to the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90 respecting a bylaw for seasonal outdoor patios and to rescind a temporary use bylaw for recreational vehicles. And this is a little unusual. The applicant in this case is the city of Brantford. And so to appear before us is someone who we've seen on many occasions, not necessarily in this role, but that is Mr. Joe Muto. So Mr. Muto, I've already said your name, but why don't you tell us who you are and then proceed to present the application.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. That is right. Joe Muto, Manager of Development Planning. Good evening, sir, and members of committee, staff, and the public. I'm here this evening. Can we get the presentation up? Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'm here this evening because staff is bringing forward a zoning bylaw amendment to extend assistance to local businesses by allowing them to establish outdoor patios and to provide for continued recovery from the economic impacts of the pandemic and allow more area for dining and patrons. Staff also recommends that the temporary use bylaw for patios and recreational vehicles be repealed as outlined in the report before you this evening. Of course, they give me this handy little thing. Oh, there we go. Okay. First time using it. First staff member using it, I think. Right, Norris? Okay. Specifically, this will be achieved through a bylaw that eases parking restrictions on private property associated with these patios, subject to regulations, which I will get into in future slides. The report also recommends that the temporary use bylaws be repealed for recreational vehicles. By way of background, on June 16th, 2020, City Council passed a resolution to allow the establishment or expansion of private outdoor patios on-street patios. This was when restaurants first began to reopen following the first wave of the pandemic. As the pandemic continued, City Council had further directed planning staff to prepare a report regarding a temporary use bylaw respecting parking requirements associated with outdoor patios, which was passed by Council on March 23rd, 2021. That bylaw allowed for a 3-month grace period once the declaration of emergency was terminated. In light of the termination, the report before you this evening recommends that similar regulations be established permanently for these seasonal patios. The temporary use bylaws for the use of recreational vehicles was approved by Council on January 26, 2021. Council's decision also included wording that allowed for a grace period beyond the termination of the declaration of emergency. In this regard, the report also requests that the temporary use bylaws for both patios and RVs be repealed. As was the case through the temporary use bylaw, this proposed bylaw will state that notwithstanding the table 6.1, which is the parking table, a patio shall not contribute to the required parking calculations for a restaurant or other businesses and may occupy space that would otherwise be required for parking, subject to the additional provisions provided on the next 2 slides. For example, if a restaurant wishes to establish an outdoor patio on 3 required parking spaces because there is no room elsewhere on the site, they would not be required to establish or reestablish the spaces elsewhere on site. Further, the additional tables on the patio would not count towards occupancy for the purposes of the parking calculation. The reason for this is to provide businesses the opportunity for continued economic recovery, as well as to enhance the community by providing added character, vibrancy, and sense of place. The next couple of slides are the proposed provisions in the bylaw that would keep patios from obstructing required works, maintaining accessible parking areas, permit unamplified entertainment, ensure that patios are adjacent to businesses, and to establish a setback from residential use. The proposed regulations will include a seasonal timeframe for their use. And lastly, the regulations would allow for further conditions to be imposed if deemed both reasonable and appropriate to safeguard public safety or mitigate nuisance. Similar to the temporary use bylaw, this zoning bylaw will work in conjunction with the existing patio Brantford's policies. These policies further regulate the establishment or extension of these patios as outlined in the report. For committee's information, no on-street patios were established over the last 2 years. The report before committee this evening also recommends that the patio Brantford policies be made permanent. In the way of consultation, planning staff provided notice of this application in a variety of forms, which included consulting with the chamber, the statutory notice in the Civic News of this evening's statutory meeting. As well, staff provided Canada Post and mail and email to all previous patio owners that applied over the last 2 years, as well as to the 10 registered RV licensees with respect to the use of the recreational vehicles. Planning staff also worked with communications to provide some engagement opportunity regarding the various social media platforms. Staff consulted with other various city departments, and in conjunction with requirements under our procedures, planning applications that are citywide required to go to Planning Advisory Committee. And that will be done on later this week on June 16th. And the outcome of that consultation will then be forwarded to council for their decision making. There was one comment received on social media from a member of the public supportive of having entertainment on the future patios. To conclude, and for the reasons outlined in the report this evening, planning staff recommend approval of the zoning bylaw and the extension of the patio Brantford policies, and that all temporary use bylaws for recreational vehicles and the previous patio regulations be repealed. Mayor Davis, that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that committee may have of me this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muto. And I would ask members of the committee that if you're raising your hand to get in the speaking order, because of where I am, it's hard to see everybody, and you hold your hand up until you can see that I've clearly seen you. Maybe that. All right. So first of all, Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. You're doing a great job. Joe, hi. This is great. Thank you. Question. Are other municipalities doing this?
Through the mayor to the councillor, many of the research that was done previously through the temporary use bylaw did outline that a number of municipalities throughout the province of Ontario were engaging with business owners to do these forms of temporary patios as well as on-street patios.
Thank you. How many temporary patios are there currently in the city of Brantford?
Through the mayor to the councillor, over the last 2 years, there's been in and around 30 requests to have these temporary patios.
And should this pass, then they can?
Through the mayor to the councillor, they would continue to operate as they have been over the last 2 years, correct?
My final question, I think for now, is regarding the time frame. Is there a reason why somebody couldn't just chill out there on a cool December evening?
Through
hot
the
food, cold nights.
Through the mayor to the councillor, the reason for staff's recommendation of a set time frame seasonally is really to ensure that such things as snow removal and storage can be addressed. And there wasn't much need or requests through the last 30 emails we received for these temporary patios to go beyond that seasonal warm weather timeframe, so that wasn't investigated or proposed through this process.
Thank you so much. This is super exciting.
I think I saw a hand over there. Was it you, Councillor Martin, or Councillor Sluss? I think it was both. I couldn't see with the panel and the refraction. I couldn't tell whose hand was being raised. So, but let's go with Councillor Martin, then Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, do we have a count on how many RVs were utilized during the pandemic for allowing people to isolate?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, there in consultation with licensing staff, there were 10 registrants that utilized their driveway or their property to isolate in their recreational vehicle.
Okay, and I received a complaint recently and passed it through, but because the temporary use bylaw is still in place, nothing could be done. Will they be acted on now, or do those complaints have to be resubmitted?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, that might be something that that the building department may comment on, but as it relates to the actual repealing bylaw, that will be done through this process and at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, there were 30 applicants, I believe you said, that erected portable or seasonal patios. Were there any that got up and weren't registered?
Through the mayor to Councillor Sless, as it related to the last 2 years and the whole idea of the economic recovery, there's no formal application, no formal permitting process. What staff did was work with communications and the economic development department to reach out to those various business owners to kind of outline or map out what they would need to do. And for the most part, my understanding is that they did. If there was a call, I'm sure it would have gone into enforcement, but through my investigation, that never occurred. So everyone basically complied through the previous 2 years in the process we had laid out.
That's good. And my final question, did you track or were there complaints from abutting neighbors of the, I guess, additional outside, the commotion, the noise, whatnot that would go along with having an outdoor patio?
Through the mayor to Councillor Sless, that was in terms of consultation with the various departments. There were some complaints, but those complaints really revolved around, I think, one individual situation where there was a smoker. So you can smoke on patios, obviously under the act, but I think the other request or the other complaint was with, just give me a second here.
Maybe to help you, Joe, it doesn't sound like there was an avalanche of complaints.
No, there was maybe 2 or 3 complaints each year, if that.
All right, that's good to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you want to add to that, Ms. Binkley?
Thank you. Through the chair, Joe was bang on. So there was just a few complaints, one regarding smoking and just a couple with respect to amplified sound under the noise bylaw, and all infractions were resolved.
Councillor McCurry.
Sure, thank you. Through you to staff, and perhaps it's not Joe's answer I'm looking for. Are there any other temporary use bylaws in place that are the after effects of the COVID stuff?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCreary, planning staff's not aware of any other temporary zoning bylaws.
Would any other member of staff like to chime in?
Through the chair, Heidi DeVries, General Manager, People, Legislative Services and Planning. The city had a few bylaws in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of temporary use under the Planning Act, these were the two, and that they're being addressed here. We also had a bylaw for the wearing of face coverings in public spaces, which was implemented prior to the provincial regulations, and that has since been repealed. And those are the few and there was, I believe, some regulation with respect to access to parks, but otherwise, those are the ones off the top of my head that I can remember. Our CAO may want to weigh in.
Talk about being put on the spot.
There was, no, I was giving her some hand language, but she wasn't picking up what I was trying to say. So the other bylaw regarding myself and the mayor having some authority over that was also repealed as well.
And are there any other restrictions which were not bylawed, which are still in effect to the best of anyone's recollection.
So through the chair, or to the chair, actually, and thank you for that hand signal to our CAO. Restrictions in terms of public facing restrictions, those would have all been enacted through various bylaws. We did have some health and safety responses that were internal to city staff, as well as impacted some contractors. Those have been suspended for the time being to allow for a return to the normal workplace. Though some of the health and safety protocols that were in place will be continued, I imagine, into the future with respect to increased sanitization and some separation with respect to public and staff interactions.
Yeah, we've learned some lessons which probably were common sense all along that we've seen quite effective. Thank you for that.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions through you to the building department first. I would assume now there's some permanency to outdoor patios at restaurants, that some of the patios become more sophisticated and may require some engineering approval. I'm not sure, but certainly as something I'd like to make sure that we get the patios permitted. Can you comment on that, please?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I thought that Councillor Utley was asking the building department. Through the Brantford or the patio Brantford policies, there is a requirement that, if a building permit is required, that applicant would have to. So it's basically a different process than a temporary patio process. So absolutely, they would require under that review or request, that review would then indicate to that applicant or owner that a building permit will be required.
Thank you, Joe. And I think Andy's might have something to add through you.
Thank you, Andy McMahon, Chief Building Official, Director of Building Services. Through the chair to you, Councillor Utley. Again, Joe has hit the nail on the head. Anytime they're building any structure, whether it be a raised platform or any type of roof structure over top of the patio, a building permit would be required.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And my last question, Mr. Chair. Many pub type restaurants have music already playing outside, and that's through some sort of a small speaker. And I would assume that would be termed as amplified music, or is it live music that we're saying that should not be amplified?
Through the mayor to Councillor Utley, it's so I may have to rely on Andy's response here, but the wording of the proposed regulation does speak to amplified music. So in that regard, then that speaker or that would be amplification. So in an effort to not create any negative impacts, planning staff is recommending that any entertainment or recreation not be amplified for the time being. And this is something that can be reviewed as time goes on if requests come in to have amplification. And then this is something that we can also look at through the new comprehensive zoning bylaw as well.
Thank you, Joe. I asked because there's already a number of pub type restaurants in the city that you can hear the music long before you get in the building, and it's not that loud. It's just hear it most when you're within about 20 feet. So I think we need to make sure that they're not violating a new.
Do you have a question? Do you have a question, Councillor Utley?
Yes. What is your comment on that, please?
Through the mayor to Councillor Utley, really when we're talking about these types of provisions, they're very much complaint based, and the way that this particular provision's been worded is that if it's causing a nuisance to the neighboring residents by unreasonably disturbing the peace. So if they're, for example, if an enforcement officer does go to the site and they seem to rely on that provision and say, yeah, that's kind of loud, you can't do that. And it is amplified and you can't do that. So they'll make the operator turn off the amplification.
Thank you, Joe.
Camille, I've got a question for you. So is there a difference between how the city handles or deals with, there's a patio in the parking lot in front of or behind the restaurant, and the patio is proposed to be on the city street, public thoroughfare?
Through to the mayor, there is a third outlet for these patios, and maybe Mr. Vries can refresh my memory, but it is handled through our manager of real estate when it's dealing with the city-owned portion of the boulevard, or let's say, for example, Harmony Square.
Yes, and how is it different, and what way?
So there is an agreement process, Mr. Mayor, that owner will have to enter into with the city.
Do you need to add to that, Mr. Vries?
Through the chair, as Mr. Muto, we should hire him in building because he keeps hitting the nail on the head. But there's an encroachment policy in the city of Brantford that's handled through, as Mr. Muto mentioned, the manager of real estate services. We'd enter into an encroachment agreement allowing for encroachment onto the city infrastructure.
And how many such applications did we have through COVID?
Through the chair, I cannot answer that off the top of my head, but we can certainly get a memo to council on that topic prior to council.
Great, thanks very much. So now we'll go to those coming in virtually. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your question actually may have led into what mine is. Parklets, that is something that I had brought to the planning department in my first term of council. Is that the difference between an outside patio and a parklet? Is a parklet something that's described as using municipal property?
Through the mayor to Councillor Antosky. So when we're talking about parklets, yeah, I mean that is a form of placemaking, a form of providing those open spaces in a temporary type situation. And when we look at the policy manual for the on-street patios, there is a mention of a parklet if that's what someone wants to use it for. And business and retail owners can also utilize that on-street parking space for other things that go beyond. So let's say, for example, the library wanted to put an on-street a patio in a parking stall out front of the library. There's other situations or scenarios in other jurisdictions where they've put some Muskoka chairs and people can actually read a book on them. So it's not primarily for just retail, for business. It's an endeavor that has taken hold in other jurisdictions that, once again, back to placemaking, and it allows corporations, the city, other agencies or business owners to utilize that space through this policy framework.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. I love this direction.
Councillor Carpenter.
Mr. Muto, could you tell me, since this was sort of an experiment through COVID, what precautions have we got in place or safety measures in place to separate the public from vehicular traffic as far as outdoor patios go?
So just to clarify to the mayor, to Councillor Carpenter, I'm assuming that the concern with regards to safety is with respect to the on-street
or parking traffic, any vehicular traffic. What separation do we have or protection do we have from from people sitting on those patios?
So in consultation with development engineering staff as well as public works staff, when we prepared the first round there of the planning policy for the on-street patio policy, it factored in all of the requirements that other jurisdictions were using, and all of the agency policies that would come into play for placing that type of patio within the right of way. So like the TAC manual was utilized. So, it wouldn't be pylons, but there'd be some reflective material that would be required in order to advance an on-street patio within the right of way.
And we're confident that will provide protection for patrons.
Sorry, Mayor Davis, I didn't quite hear what that last piece was from Councillor
Could you just say that a little bit louder, Councillor Carpenter?
Yeah, so you're confident that the patrons are well protected then?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's hard to really provide a response on. I mean, we've done everything with respect to making it safe through the policy framework in place, but anecdotally, there's not been any significant accident in Ontario, to my knowledge, of these on-street patios.
And the reason I raise it, Joe, is I noticed that in some of the strip malls we have parking directly out front, and then the sidewalk is the front of the strip plaza, and several of them have been mounted by cars that went through windows. It's just for the grace of God that someone hasn't been hurt. That's why I wanted to raise it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Carpenter, you just have to speak a little clearer. It's a bit of problem at your end, but I think, Nicole, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to the councillor, I just wanted to provide some clarification with respect to the safeguards that are put in place. Our municipal policy does require that there is a perimeter type fencing that is installed in and around the patio so that there is the separation between on-street cars or traffic moving and those sitting safely on an outdoor patio. And that's also part of our review process. So that fencing needs to be constructed out of wood or metal. And there's also the encouragement for some visual other sort of demarcations on that fencing to indicate that there is a barrier or a barricade that's been in place to allow for the safe use of that patio.
Any other questions, Councillor Carpenter?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Muto. So we have no registered virtual members to partake in the meeting and provide public input. So I'm going to ask those who are present here in the council chamber, is there any member of the public who would like to step forward and speak to this application, either in support of or in opposition to? And if you wish to do that, then you would come forward to the delegates table. And I'm going to ask that one more time. No, two more times. Is there anybody who is here present in the council chamber that would like to speak to this matter, either in opposition to or in support of the application? And for the third and final time, is there any member of the public who is present tonight that would like to speak to this application, either in support of or in opposition? And so we have no one coming forward to speak to this matter from members of the public who are here tonight. And I'm then going to ask Mr. Muto, is there anything further you want to add to clarify or deal with anything?
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing further to add.
All right. So I will now close the public hearing portion of this meeting, and I'll ask Councillor Utley to move item 5.1, and please state your seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amendment to the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 16090, respecting a bylaw for seasonal outdoor patios and to rescind the temporary use bylaw for recreational vehicles, PZ 17/2022, citywide financial impact, none. And it's moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless. A, that zoning bylaw amendment application PZ 1722 initiated by the Corporation of the City of Brantford to amend the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90 to establish permanent zoning regulations for seasonal outdoor patios be approved, in accordance with the applicable provisions as noted in section 9.0 of Report 2022-359. And B, that bylaw number 15/2021, bylaw number 16/2021, and bylaw number 62/2021 be repealed in their entirety. And C, that planning policy 005 patio Brantford private patio policy and planning policy 004 patio Brantford on-street patio policy be amended to remove any mention of COVID-19 or the declaration of emergency, and that the necessary bylaws to affect those amendments be presented to council for approval. And D, that pursuant to section 3418.2 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, the following statement shall be included in the notice of decision. Regard has been had for all written and oral submissions received from the public before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter, as discussed in sections 8.2 of Report 2022-359. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have the resolution open for discussion. Any speakers? Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. So if there's one thing that's certain is that the COVID-19 pandemic was tragic. But from that tragedy, there was a springboard to creativity and innovation and new ideas, which have changed the world. One example, the way we govern, right? There are two councillors who aren't even present here. Prior to the pandemic, that wouldn't have been possible. But thanks to the hard work of staff and creative, innovative ideas and technology that we now have hybrid meetings forevermore. It's changed the way committees and whatever. Now, these patios, right? Businesses were forced to find a way to do it different. Staff were forced to find a way to do it different. To now take this idea that was a way to help save businesses, to now help them be more prosperous, to be more beneficial. This is just good work. I want to thank staff. I have so many friends and colleagues and professional associates who are in the restaurant business, and the consultation and the communication and the working togetherness, that's a word, on this project was awesome. And I just wish that everything was like this. And Joe, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. I know that this patio thing has been something we've been talking about for years, and for it to come to fruition like this, I do hope that this gets unanimous support from the council. I know I'm focusing on the patios, but that's the fun part of this, I think. This is cool. I hope we see more innovation, more creativity, more ideas on how we can do things different, because I think many of us would all agree that things need to change and we do need to do things different. So can you tell I'm excited? Because I'm excited. This is cool. Thank you to everybody involved.
Councillor Wall, you're always excited. Councillor Edley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On my travels, and I'm sure many of you have been to many countries that have like outdoor patios are just normal. You know, it's they add to the atmosphere and the excitement and the vibrancy of cities and towns. And I see this as very much a catalyst to open up that that experience in our small community. Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City have great outdoor places. Stratford. So I think this is great for the city as a whole. It adds to our culture. People can meet each other as they go down the street and see somebody they know, maybe join them for a beer or something to eat. And, it's instant social times as we live our lives. So I fully support this. Well done, staff. Great job. I think there may need to be some fine tuning around patios that are in close proximity to roads, busy roads. And I saw, I was up at the Honey Harbour area at the weekend, and there was one place that had a beautiful outdoor patio with some mini concrete barriers, and they were painted and they had illuminated stripes on them for safety. But that's something we may need to look into to make sure that those sitting on the patio in close proximity to traffic are safeguarded by some kind of barrier. Thank you.
All right, before we go to those who are coming in virtually, I'd like to say a few words. And, look back in the pandemic, and especially the beginning of the pandemic, and there was no sector, well, there were several, but certainly the restaurant sector really took it on the chin. And I was very concerned, as were many others in the city, that the pandemic and all those restrictions you recall we had initially, what that was going to do to the restaurant sector. Would they ever recover? And, I look back on that with a lot of pride at just how adaptable the restaurateurs in our city were, and adapted to the challenges that they faced throughout the pandemic. Most of them continue to operate, moving to that takeout mode, but clearly there were some who, for whatever reason, could not make that shift, and they did and still depend on the patrons who come to their restaurant. And for many restaurant owners, this has been a godsend. It's allowed them increase their capacity, which is critical in turning the profitability of a restaurant from being poor and insolvency to making a profit. And that is the number of tables and patrons they can serve. So this has been essential for the restaurant industry in our community to help them recover. But I think in the long term, to ensure the sustainability of the restaurant operators. Plus, it contains a lesson for us. When this first came up, how many times did we hear, "Oh, this is not going to work. There's going to be this problem. There's going to be that problem." And because the city had been considering it for a long time, and the fact that we moved so quickly and we made a decision that internally we would say, "Well, no, that's not going to work. There's so many potential problems." But guess what? It worked. And it shows that sometimes what you think will happen doesn't actually happen. And when you make decisions on something like this, you've got to keep an open mind and be prepared to adapt and innovate. And I got to say, with a great deal of pride, that's what we did here at the city throughout the pandemic. I always like to plug the staff, senior staff, middle managers, line staff. They did an excellent job in the city organization adapting to the pandemic, as did many restaurant operators. So very happy to support this, see that it's going to be permanent. And the other thing is, we heard, there's going to be so many problems, or there could potentially be problems, and that's true. But were there problems? No, like 3 complaints. And so I think that's a testament to one, a certain tolerance in citizens to help the restaurant industry, but 2, restaurateurs that complied with the rules. So now we'll go to Councillor Sakola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The problem with being remote is you end up repeating a lot of what's been said. I think this is a great direction forward. As you said, Mayor, it's something that's been talked about. We had all these fears, just like working remotely was another thing we talked about. Does this bring work-life balance? But we were afraid to do it. So COVID did force some really positive movements. As I said, I brought the parklet idea through. It had come to me through Anna Olson. And I thought, this is great. This will bring vibrancy to the downtown core, which is something we talk about a lot. So I just think it's great that we're looking at how we can do this, how we can get it done, and how it can help the restaurants. I know a lot of people, when they're booking a lunch out, they'll call around saying, hey, is your patio open? Do you have a patio? They want to spend some time outside. So I think this is great for our businesses. I think it's great for the downtown, and hopefully we'll really get more people down there, because more people outside and in good moods and you know, having lunches is going to change that culture down there. It's going to be a part of a bigger picture. Thank you, staff.
All right, not seeing any other raised hands. Chris, would you please take the vote?
Item 5.1, amendment to the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90, respecting a bylaw for seasonal outdoor patios and to rescind the temporary use bylaw for recreational vehicles carries unanimously and recorded vote of 11-0. Members of the committee voting in favor as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Martin, Toski, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Sakola, and Mayor Davis.
Councillor McCreary, I now happily relinquish the chair back to you.
Mayor, thank you. And may I say it was a pleasure watching you in action.
Maybe there's lessons to be learned.
I'm sure some out there may learn one. Presentations and delegations. We're on to item 6 now. Thank you for the indulgence of the delegation tonight in waiting for us to conclude the planning hearing. We're required to do that at that point in the agenda for tonight. Lori Lloyd, you're here on behalf of the Brantford Chicken Association. Please come forward. You have 10 minutes to address us, and that includes any time that you may leave on the table for questions. Please go ahead when you're ready.
There we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. You may remember me. I'm Lori Lloyd at 56 Banbury Road in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. I'm here today representing the 56 registered members of the Brantford Chicken Association. We, the members, would like to thank Bylaws Jill Binkley for working side by side with us to help establish suggested bylaws that are aimed to work for all the parties involved, including the chickens. At this time, we understand the new bylaw proposal to be a maximum of 10 hens or 9 hens and 1 rooster. The pen section of the bylaw will remain the same at a minimum of 7.5 meters distance from the closest structure. There will be redefining of the term coop and redefining of the term structure so that structure is defined as a building where people reside, not garages or sheds. A coop that is built for safety against predators with proper ventilation, but not requiring to be lifted as previously suggested, as that's unnecessary if predator proofed properly. Coops must have purchased ventilation, form of litter, and bedding, as well as be kept clean for the health of the chickens, neighbors, wildlife, and chicken keepers. A one-time fee of $100 for an inspection process that was thoroughly explained to us by Jill Binkley. Thank you, Jill. The present members to be grandfathered in, meaning those that are legal within the present bylaw, will not be required to rehome hens or roosters that go above the 10 previously mentioned. But once down to the maximum bylaw permits, we must remain within the new bylaw. Also, we are not required to make changes to anything else that changed within the new bylaws. But once we do, you must follow them at that time and in the future. If we are correct in our assessment of the members of the Brantford, we, the members of the Brantford Chicken Association, believe that we have come to an agreeable bylaw, and we thank you for taking the time to work with us to find an acceptable medium. Thank you.
Ms. Lloyd, thank you for your presentation. I have Councillor Wall in the queue.
You don't waste any time, eh? Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Your delegation does mean the world. Have you had any communication with the Brantford Poultry Association?
No, we were told by one member that they aren't functioning, that there isn't a president at the present time. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's all I've heard.
You said your association has 56 members?
We have 56 registered members that have membership cards.
So without going into any like specifics about an individual, could you just elaborate a little bit on who some of your members are? Where they reside in the city, so not like street names, but like, are they spread out?
They're literally all over the city. Most of our members are below the 10 hens, no roosters at this time. Structures were already the required 7.5 meters, and some are even further. We haven't had any problems with any of our members. Everybody has been very upfront with what they have and what they're doing and what their coops look like. They've posted pictures, and everybody is doing everything can to protect their chickens.
So cool. Sorry. This is great. Thanks again for being here. I read the report and then I read it again. It seems the only thing that there was a concern with was the $100, and you'd like to see, not you, but the association, you want it to be $50.
Actually, we agreed to the $100 because actually Jill Binkley, we worked together, and she bent on a few things, so we let go of a few things. We felt it was fair. We would happily pay the $100 and apply to all the inspection process if we were allowed to keep the 7.5 meters and not add the extended 8 feet on top of it.
Awesome. And I know you already said it, but I just want to hear it again. Could you tell us a little bit about how pleasant the experience working with our staff was?
Jill Binkley has been absolutely amazing. I've met with her in person. We've talked on the phone, and we have emailed back and forth. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with her.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Sless, go ahead, please.
Sounds like Jill's going to be asking for a raise on this chair. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your input. I think you indicated you have 56 members in your association.
Yes.
Can you guesstimate how many there are that aren't in your association in the city?
I have no idea.
Okay, but there are others.
I believe so. We've been in contact with other cities as well that either have chickens already or are looking to get them. So word has gotten around about us and has spread outside of our city. So I'm not sure how many actually don't know about us at this point, because we've become very popular over the internet.
Right. Okay. It's just in reading the report, I think staff were projecting 10 registrants at the $100. We also have to deal with funding as well. And I thought that was a vast understatement.
No, we have 32 that I had turned into 32 homes with addresses and everything that are actually registered with the city at this point. And I believe I have 2 more to add to that.
Okay. So perhaps there will be more than 10.
There is 34 for sure.
Thanks very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Councillor, thank you. Any other requests to speak, asking questions from members of this committee? Seeing, yes?
Sorry, what's next for the association? Can you talk?
Please go ahead, Councillor Wall.
Sorry, this is exciting. It is, because this has been a debate around this table for a very long time, and your association's brand new. You seem to be off to a amazing momentum. So could you just tell this council what's next? How are you going to make the life of chicken and rooster owners and the lives of chickens and roosters better?
Actually, we've actually this week just started the next step. We have a monthly calendar where we do regular posts. We do different chicken breeds, chicken of the week, predator of the week. Wednesdays are update with city council and avian flu, other health related issues within the city limits, lice, whatever is going on. We do that update on Wednesdays. Monday and Tuesday are based on other information members are looking for, like medical and whatnot. We're presently writing a constitution and rules to our association, and we will be starting games and contests because the members have paid $2 for their membership card. There's no fee to join the group, the association, but it's $2 for your card, and that $2 goes back in, and we're using that to purchase prizes for a few games and stuff. And we're going to have meetings and gatherings once people are more comfortable.
I promise this is the last question. Okay. This is going to make news. And there are going to be people in Brantford who have questions about how this works, or they may have concerns or whatever. Are you guys, or does your association have a communication strategy? And how will you be responding to questions or comments, or where do people go to communicate with you guys? Maybe they live next door to somebody who has could you elaborate on that?
We have an email address, Brantford Chicken Assoc, ASSOC, at gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page and we have the Facebook group. We have a team. We do not have a hierarchy, so there's no president, vice president. We are a team. We do everything based on decisions through the entire group. And so when it comes to things like this, everything here today was based on information from all of our members and all of our team. So we do it as a whole.
I have so many
Not
more
as an
questions, but I'll let you off the hook. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Councillor Wall, thank you. Councillor Carpenter, you're into the last minute of play. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so it's a simple question. How many of your members have roosters?
I'm not exactly sure how many have roosters. I know 4 for sure. And I am one of them.
Thank you.
My roosters, however, have no crow collars, and you cannot hear them at my closest neighbors when they're in the yard talking.
Councillor, thank you. And Ms. Lloyd, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. We'll be moving on to discuss this momentarily. Let me see now. Who has the resolution? Councillor Van Tilburg, I believe you have the motion to deal with separated items.
I don't, but let's do it. That all items for consideration and consent, 7.1, 7.2, separated for discussion, be approved, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Wall.
Councillor Goodsave, thank you very much for that. Speakers to the resolution before us. Councillor Wall, you have the floor.
This is the chicken one, right?
10-4.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone around this table, staff, the people watching at home. This is literally one of the very first things I ever crusaded for as a city councillor. And I just knew it needed more thought, more conversation, more discussion. Like, I honestly can't tell you how exciting it is to hear that a whole new association has popped up around this. And does it need more? Absolutely. But I think the conversation is coming to an end for now. And it's just really cool. And I'm really thankful to everybody who participated in the conversation. I'm thankful to everybody who went online. Councillor Vanderstel, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That's what I want to say. I hope that this gets unanimous support.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. We'll move on now to Councillor Sakola. You have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I am so impressed by how quickly this association came together and how it's just such a beautiful example of the residents working with the city to come together to come up with a very logical solution to a perceived issue. I do have one question of staff. In the registration process for the chickens, so someone wants to create a coop, they have some chickens, do they have to register the roosters separately, or is it just we don't care as long as there's 10?
Through the chair to Councillor Sakola, Jill Binkley, manager of Bylaw and Property Standards. So no, we wouldn't require that the rooster be registered separately, but it would be an inspection that covered a number of areas, and education would be provided as to the limit that is decided upon, and whether that includes one rooster.
Okay. Do you see any benefit to the city knowing who has a rooster? Should we know that?
Through the chair to Councillor Sakola, I'm sure there's a way we could note it within our system. As far as a benefit, I think really we would be handling any of the complaints regarding noise from roosters under our noise bylaw on a complaint basis anyway. So at this point, like just off the top of my head, I can't think of a huge benefit.
Okay. I was just curious if there was any reason why we'd have to keep track of that. Other than that, thank you. Great job to everybody who worked on this. I'm very happy to see this move forward, and it has my full support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And over to Mayor Davis. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I, first of all, I'll apologize in advance if I offend anybody, but I hope they'll take my comments in the spirit in which they're intended. So first of all, Mr. Chair, I'm no spring chicken when it comes to dealing with roosters. You've heard me talk about this before. We had a rooster in our neighborhood that crowed at all hours, not just at dawn. And I got to tell you, it seemed only to be quiet whenever the bylaw enforcement officer showed up. So although I'm confident the sky will not fall if we do allow roosters, I truly believe we'll be laying an egg to include roosters in this particular bylaw. And you know what? Someone has to speak on behalf of the average householder who has no desire or wish to keep chickens or roosters, but they'll be madder than a wet hen when they end up with a crowing rooster next to them. And I suggest we should not be going off half-cocked in allowing roosters. In fact, don't we really know from our experiences in life, it's really the hens that rule the roost. Right, Councillor Well? I thought they'd get a better response. Come on, female staff. So although I'll acknowledge, and I'm happy that we count 10 chickens before they're hatched, or 10 hens. 10 hens are okay. I'm not okay with leaving homeowners who sometimes, if they're dealing with an irresponsible rooster owner, dealing with what it comes when you have crowing roosters beside you. And I know from experience what that's about. I'm totally happy with the hens. I like hens. Roosters are a problem. So I am going to put on the floor an amendment, and I'm doing this seriously, that roosters not be permitted and that they be excluded from our coming bylaw. Looking for a seconder.
I'll come back to you with that once everybody's had an opportunity.
All right, good. Everybody's got notice where I sit with roosters. There should be no doubt.
And the chair will say to the assembled masses that I regret the excessive use of puns. I thought we would get through the night without having deluges of puns. And I will say that any further punning will run afoul of the chair. Are there any speakers to this item before we go to the amendment? Mayor, go ahead and introduce your amendment.
In case it's not clear, my amendment, which I believe my good friend Councillor Utley is going to support, I'm not sure he's going to vote in favor of it, but he'll at least put it on the floor, is that roosters be not included in our new chicken bylaw, and that it did not include roosters. I'm not sure exactly what the wording should be, but I think the intent is clear. And you know, I say in all seriousness, I have a lot of respect for hen owners. It is very educational. It is a great food source, and obviously doesn't depend on roosters, and which I didn't know, but now I know. But I just, in all seriousness, the experience that I've had in our neighborhood with roosters is that they can be a problem, and I'm really concerned about the ability to deal with those problems that you don't have when you have hens. That kind of like life. So that is my amendment.
Thank you for that, Mayor. And you did indicate that your seconder was Councillor Utley, but are you previewing Councillor Utley's vote? Was that part of your commentary?
I never presume anything.
Thank you, Mayor. So now we'll be speaking to the amendment, and first in the queue I have Councillor Wall. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. You're doing a great job. I want to read a direct quote from the Brantford Expositor in April of 2019. "There are other animals in Brantford that make noise," said Wall, noting barking dogs and cats in heat. "Why are we picking on the roosters? Somebody's got to stand up for the roosters." I stand by those words to this day.
Councillor Wall, thank you very much for that. In the room, I have Councillor Utley. You're in the queue next, and Councillor Natosky will come to you when we go to remote participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're doing a punning good job tonight. I I'm not going to support, I know I seconded the motion, I'm not going to support it for the following reasons. I think let's let this go for a year or so, and then let's see how many complaints may be forthcoming. I don't want to nail people when there's not a problem or enact something where there's not a problem. So that's where I stand on this, and someone's got to defend those poor roosters, so might as well be me. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you very much. Gee, there was a rush of hands over here. I'm going to go to Councillor Martin first.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the amendment. Roosters can be very annoying, and they belong in the country. They don't belong in the city. And I realize that some people have them and that they're quiet. Well, if they're quiet, then nobody's going to complain about them. Nobody's going to know they're there, and life's going to go on. But if we allow them, then some are going to get ones that are noisy, and we're going to have a hard time getting them out if we want to change the bylaw in the future. We have to include no roosters at this time so that we give the property standard staff the tools they need in their toolbox to deal with roosters that are a problem. So for that reason, I'll be supporting the amendment and supporting the motion as amended or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Slash, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, through you to Jill. Jill, it's to me, when this debate took place back when it took place, I don't know, it was in February or March, prior to this meeting. I thought at that evening that there was a demonstrated need to have a rooster in a group of hens. Am I forgetting something, or is it something that you'd be able to respond to?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste. So are you speaking in terms of the delegation have reported that evening?
I think so. I just remember hearing it that evening being said that there is a reason why you need a rooster, and I'm not sure the reason for that escapes me.
Right. So they do call on roosters for protection. They do protect the hens. However, if you are using or if you are having backyard chickens for the purposes of egg production, you don't need a rooster. So roosters wouldn't necessarily be required in a group of hens.
Okay. So the rooster provides security for the group.
That's correct. And a rooster would fertilize an egg to make more chickens.
Okay, we're not getting into that business, right? We're doing eggs, correct? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you. I'm going to ask a question before I go to the next speaker. The delegation spoke to having altered her rooster so he's mute. Is there a word for that term?
Through the chair to committee, so it's a no-crow collar that is relatively new technology from what I understand for roosters, and I believe the association is seeing some success with that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Vanderstel, you're next. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair McCurry. I'm painfully aware that we're up to 21 minutes already, on top of the 110 minutes the first time around. I wouldn't second this amendment for a number of reasons. We have made a critical error here in mistaking behavior and behavior-driven things that roosters tend to do from the roosters themselves. Not every rooster in every situation needs to crow. Some are just happy being quiet most of the time. In other areas in the city, there are roosters that garner absolutely no complaints from the neighborhood. They're crowing all the time. And there's many in Ward 1 and the the sort of newly acquired section of Ward 1, where this rule would apply and shouldn't apply because the uses on those lands are quite a bit different than they are in the urban setting. So we have to bear in mind that we have an awful lot of different types of rural agricultural and state agricultural things in the city. The reason I wouldn't second it is because it's like any other offending behavior. It's like any other noise, repetitive noise that would carry on and on and on. We don't want to penalize anybody who raises good birds or quiet birds. And I do believe we already have the mechanisms to deal with offending behaviors as they come up. I think we've seen that in this term of council and last term of council as well. So I'm looking forward to trying to keep this under 200 minutes. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you. And you did that by leaving 2 minutes and 14 on the clock. Councillor Sakola, go ahead, please.
I'll make my ward mate happy and go very quick. I just want to echo some of the sentiments that were shared by Councillor Vanderstelt and some of my councillor colleagues here. I just don't see the need to regulate or over-regulate this. We have the mechanisms in place for the bad seeds or the continued offenders as far as the roosters go. We may have had some problems in the past, maybe from over here. And, you know, we just let bylaw sort that out. We don't start banning dogs and cats in my neighbor's sound system. Every time a noise complaint comes in, I don't think we should be doing it here today. So I absolutely will not be supporting this amendment here today. Thanks.
Councillor Sakola, thank you. Councillor Natosky, thank you for your patience. You're up.
Thank you. I won't repeat everything that's been said. I also will not support the amendment. As was said previously this evening on another item, let's not predict a problem that may not be there. We do have some tools, and just as bylaw would go and knock on a door for a barking dog all day long, educate the owners. Now they can educate the owners in terms of the collar or different types of roosters, or what they need to do to be in compliance. So I like the idea of the pilot, and you know what, we're ready to cross the finish line. Let's get there.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Before I go to Councillor Wall for a second speaking opportunity. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Councillor Wall. Let me say this, that we did consult with the folks that own the chickens. And we did listen to the folks that own the chickens. And one of the things they asked for were roosters. And the last we convened, we were okay with that. I think if we were going to be making this choice tonight to exclude roosters, we probably should have had a second round of discussion, which I don't believe we've had. So, you know, as with many decisions we make, perhaps this will be wrong. But I think we need to honor the consultation that we had and have faith in the people who seem to be pretty doggone responsible to ensure that they don't create any nuisances. And I have faith that they will not. So I won't be supporting the amendment either. Now, Councillor Wall, I didn't want to put you on the spot to encourage you to have a second speaking opportunity, but I did go to you. Would you like to go again? I'm sorry for making that error. We have, yes, Councillor Sless, I did have you down for number 2. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. It was just listening to the debate made me think, through you, Mr. Chair, to Jill. Jill, did we contemplate the annexed lands when we were doing this? Like, there's folks that actually live rurally, where they probably think they can do anything they want because they live out in the country, but how does that work? Are they subject to this, or are they subject to some other set of rules?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste. So the animal control bylaw currently includes an exemption for farmlands. So there is farms and poultry keeping in those lands that is accepted from the bylaw.
So if there's areas, I'm thinking maybe along Highway 24, where there's 5 or 6 homes in a row. If they wanted to have 20 chickens, could they have 20 chickens?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste. So if their property is classified as a farm under the Tax Act, then they would be able to have as many chickens as a farm operation would allow.
Okay, and so anybody else would therefore be subject to these rules and regulations? Is that?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, no one's in the queue, so we'll go to the vote. Yes. Sorry, on the amendment. Yeah.
I just went dead. I'm a negative.
The amendment to item 7.1.7 fails on a recorded vote of 5-6. Members of the committee voting on the prevailing side are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel / Wall.
Sorry. My vote is against the amendment.
Okay, duly noted, Councillor Antosky. So the amendment's lost on a recorded vote of 4-7. Members of the committee voting against are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel / Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Utley, Sakola. Those in favor of the amendment: Councillors Martin, Carpenter, McCreary, and Mayor Davis.
The chair has either made an error in pushing the button or it's been recognized incorrectly. Mine is a negative as well. Yeah, thank you. So now, folks, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that heckling. Thank you.
I want to commend you for not using a pun in everything you said.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we're back to the debate on the motion, which was not amended. Councillor Wall, you're in the queue for the original motion. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that you can't make a cake without breaking a few eggs.
Thank you for that. No one else in the queue? Oh, sorry, Councillor Carpenter. Go ahead, please.
Did I hear during the debate that this is going to be reviewed in a year? Can staff confirm that?
Through the chair, we could certainly provide an update to council in 1 year's time on the success of the program of the amendments.
Would you require an amendment to this bylaw, or are you okay with just?
Councillor, that's in order if you'd like to do that now.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment that we at least review this in a year.
Seconded by Councillor Celeste. Councillor Carpenter, did you wish to speak further to that?
No, it's pretty clear.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. The mover says friendly. The seconder was, I'm sorry.
Van Tilburg was the
mover. Is the mover satisfied that that's a friendly amendment? A 12-month review?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter, and thank you, mover and seconder. We're back to the original motion as friendly amended. No speakers in the queue. We'll now go to the vote. Mr. Gauthier.
Item 7.1.7 carries on recorded vote of 10-1. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel / Martin Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley, Sakola, Mayor Davis. Those opposed: Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. Now, that concludes the business with respect to items for consideration. Mayor, could you chair again, and I'll bring my resolutions.
Certainly. So, Councillor McCreary, I understand you have a resolution.
That is correct, Mayor. Councillor Martin is the seconder, and the resolution is as follows. Whereas on June 22, 21, City Council passed a resolution titled Project Noisemaker, which included a targeted campaign to enforce unnecessary and excessive vehicle noise, as well as the establishment of an enforcement blitz on excessive vehicle noise in conjunction with the Brantford Police Service. And whereas other municipalities have passed similar resolutions that have lobbied the provincial government, and whereas the Council of the City of Brantford deems it desirable to support other municipal resolutions, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Brantford supports the below resolution from the town of Ajax regarding setting a maximum decibel count for exhaust systems, ensuring they will not be permitted in the province of Ontario, considering increasing penalties for non-compliance and increased funding to the OPP to aid in enforcement efforts, and further, that this resolution be circulated to the Honourable Caroline Mulroney, Minister of Transportation, the Honourable Will Boma, MPP Brantford Brant, and the Brant County, Ontario Provincial Police. and the vehicle noisemaker muffler systems, Town of Ajax, their resolution reads as follows, where according to section 75 of the Highway Traffic Act, every motor vehicle shall be equipped with a muffler in good working order and in constant operation to prevent excessive or unusual noise and excessive smoke, and no person shall use a muffler cutout, straight exhaust, gutted muffler, Hollywood muffler, bypass, or similar device upon a motor vehicle. And whereas the act of modifying the exhaust system of vehicle is not currently an offense under the HTA, and as a result, muffler and auto body shops continue to provide such services to individuals who choose to modify their vehicles, which could make these vehicles less safe. And whereas Durham Regional Police Service has actively been laying charges numbering 49 to date pursuant to section 75 against motor vehicle operators whose vehicles make excessive or unusual noise or produce excessive smoke from muffler systems that have been modified. And whereas Ajax Council continues to receive negative feedback about an increase in noise due to modified vehicles. And whereas on October 28, 19, Province of Ontario introduced Bill 132, Better for People, Smarter for Business Act, which in part sought to amend the HTA to include a new section 75.1, which would make it offense to tamper with motor vehicles by removing, bypassing, defeating, or rendering inoperative all or part of a motor vehicle's emission control system, or modifying a motor or motor vehicle in any way that results in increased emissions from the vehicle to which it was originally designed or certified by the manufacturer of the motor or motor vehicle, as well as prohibit the sale of tampering devices that can create excessive noise or smoke on our streets and in our neighborhoods. And whereas Bill 132 received royal assent on December 10, 19, however, the Lieutenant Governor has not yet proclaimed Section 75.1 of the HTA. And whereas the City of Mississauga has passed 2 motions, and Region Appeal also passed a motion calling on the province to immediately proclaim and bring into force Section 75.1. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Ajax Council urged the Province of Ontario to work with the Lieutenant Governor to expedite the proclamation of 75.1 of the Highway Traffic Act. And 2, that the Ministry of Transportation be requested to set a maximum decibel count for exhaust systems to ensure that exhaust systems with a capability of exceeding 80 decibels will not be available for sale and will not be permitted in the province of Ontario, and consider reviewing and increasing associated penalties for non-compliance. And 3, the province of Ontario be requested to provide funding for police services in Ontario to be equipped with approved decibel monitor devices to aid in effective efforts. And number 4, a copy of this motion be sent to the Honourable Carolyn Mulroney, Minister of Transport, Honourable Rod Phillips, Minister LTC, MPP for Ajax, all Durham Region members of Provincial Parliament, Region of Durham, Durham Municipalities, Durham Regional Police Service, and the Ontario Provincial Police. And I'd just like to say that as your council, as your delegated representatives to the Brantford Police Service, Councillor Martin and I participated in 2 public hearings this past week to ask folks what their priorities on policing for this community should be going forward. And we heard loud and clear that this was one of possibly the top 7 concerns in this municipality, is that people have really had their fill of folks that alter their vehicles simply to make noise. And I know it's been mentioned here before that in a motorcycle that may save lives, and that's not what this is about, because we're calling on the province to take action to limit decibel levels and to provide enforcement tools. We, in particular, Mayor, you have been to 640 West Street, which is disproportionately plagued by these noises and bad behaviors. And those folks are really unable to enjoy their own balconies, and that's common. And we hear the same thing from our neighborhood that's on the east side of King George Road. That they're subject to the same kind of noise from folks racing up and down needlessly, and altering their vehicles to say, "Look at me, listen to me." It's just not right. So I would hope that everybody here today would be supportive of this. As I said during the recitation, we're supporting the town of Ajax, and this has gained some legs with respect to appealing to the province. Provincial government has a new mandate, and I, as I said, I hope this will receive adequate support to pass tonight. The province, of course, will take all things into account. And as I said earlier, we do hear that commentary about noisy motorcycles, and I'm sure that the province certainly wouldn't take any sort of action that would endanger lives cause disrepute amongst the segment of the population. So thank you, Mayor. Again, I'll repeat, I hope everybody will support this tonight, because this is not just a Ward 3 thing. It's not just a North Brantford thing. It's commonplace in this municipality and everywhere else in Ontario.
Thank you. Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly supportive of this. I think it's long overdue. And when I read the whereases in the resolution, it was back in June of last year of 2021 that we passed a resolution about noisemaker, and there was going to be a blitz in the city to clamp down on folks that have been doing this to their vehicles. And all we did was declare it. I've never heard the result. If there was a blitz, were fines handed out? How was that handled? To anybody
is that a rhetorical question, or would you?
No, I've been asked that a number of times on the phone, and I really don't have an answer. I didn't have a lot of luck calling the big building on Elgin Street, so perhaps in this building we can get an answer.
Yeah, I think we'll probably hear from one of our two police service board members when they have their opportunity to speak.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councillor Utley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Sluss has said, this is long overdue, and I'm very much in need. There's nothing worse than sitting on a patio along King George Road, and you're in the middle of a conversation, and these noisy cars go, and you can't hear anything, and it's not right. I feel sorry for those that live in close proximity to King George Road and other main thoroughfares in the city. In my own neighborhood, there's a neighbor with a noisy car, and sitting idle for several minutes before it's revving it up and then finally takes off. So, I'd rather have that than I'd rather have a rooster than a noisy car, to be honest. But anyway, I fully support this. Thank you.
Councillor Sakola.
I know it's already been said, but I'm going to reiterate this because it's important to me. My own husband and many friends who I care deeply about ride motorcycles. And when we purchase a new motorcycle, as we just recently did, the first thing I say to my husband is go get some loud mufflers, because you have to be heard. And unfortunately, when you're not heard in a car, it's, a little ding and an inconvenience. When you're not heard on a motorcycle, it's a big deal. It's catastrophic. It's a fatality. And I would have liked to have seen this addressed in some way here. So for that reason, I can't support this. I can't. Unfortunately, I can understand how annoying it is. But once again, I think we have the mechanisms in place. If there is a loud vehicle in the neighborhood, call bylaw. We do not need to over-regulate everything over and over again. And for the sake of keeping my husband and all my friends alive, I will not be supporting this, unfortunately, although I can appreciate where it came from and why. Thanks.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Well, I guess I come from an environment of loud motorcycles and loud cars and all that fun stuff from my teenage years until my aged years. And yet, all that time, there have been laws regarding sound and decibel levels. And all that time, there have been various police forces happy to go out there and pull you over and give you a ticket for excessive noise, or to have you come and make sure that your exhaust system has been put into spec. So I think what we're looking at in the last number of years is an absence of enforcement. And that absence has been seen in other areas as well. It's not just being the noisy cars. So, you know, I can take it or leave this resolution. The fact is, this stuff's already on the books. The question you might want to ask is, why is something as common as used to always be enforced? You know, when we were young, you'd laugh, you'd take your lumps and go, yep, got to go put some insulation in my pipes. You know, you do what you do because you've been wrong and you got to do right. And people will correct and do right. But if there's nobody there telling you, hey, that's really excessive. I've been in a park and watched a fleet of bikes go by, and you know what? You can't hear yourselves talk. I get it. I've also been on one of those bikes and on those rides, and you know, you're thinking in a different world. And when motorcyclists do say, there's a number of things that we do to protect ourselves. Yeah, we're a little bit louder than a car, or we want to be. And the other thing we might do is drive 1 or 2 miles per hour a little faster in order to have an initiative, because you're always looking right, left, because you never know who's going to pull into you. So there's always a safety element. Motorcyclists should know how to take care of themselves. Police should know how to enforce the law and enforce the law. And again, my question is, and perhaps we have a couple of members on the Police Services Board that might be able to answer, why not? Do we not have decibel testers at the police station?
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Martin, I think it's appropriate you be next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, to answer Councillor Sless's question, we didn't get any results from the one in the fall, but there was one last month in which there was 18 charges for noisy mufflers or modified mufflers. And those were all charges, not just warnings. So they are working on enforcing this. And this resolution just encourages them to continue to do that kind of blitz occasionally and crack down on this, because it is a problem. And it's not just the occasional noisy car driving by. The poor residents on the corner of Fairview and West Street, it's the racing that goes on in the neighborhood. And the police have been notified of that now, and hopefully they'll crack down on that as well. But when you've got, you know, several noisy cars all running at the same time and revving at the stop sign, it becomes unbearable. Councillor Utley mentioned, you know, sitting on a patio and a noisy car going by. Well, imagine that outside your balcony, there's a red light and there's one sitting there revving the engine while waiting for the light to change. There's no need for that. And this is a way for the police to encourage the police to crack down on that and give them the tools they need to crack down on that. And the idea that you need to make noise when you're a motorcyclist, I don't buy that. My father drove bike for decades. The only accident was when they were on holidays, someone ran into their bike while it was parked in the hotel parking lot. So of course it wasn't making any noise at that point, but that's the only accident that he had on his bike, because he always drove defensively. And he always stressed that to me and my brother, that if you're ever on a bike, you have to drive defensively, because car drivers aren't always looking for you, but you always have to look for the cars when you're on a bike. And I've seen motorcyclists who have no concept of how to drive defensively on the roads. And it's unfortunate, but some of them unfortunately meet up with the laws of nature and the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are enforced immediately, and sometimes they can be enforced fatally. So it's very important for anybody on two wheels to be defensive and aware of your surroundings at all times. And if you're making a lot of noise, you don't hear anybody else. And when there's motorcycle rides, I know my father was a member of the Red Knights for years, and whenever there was a group ride, they made the Harleys ride at the back, so the rest of them didn't have to listen to them. So it's even motorcyclists know that you don't have to make a lot of noise if you ride responsibly and defensively. And so I'll be supporting this wholeheartedly, and hopefully the police will start to enforce this a little bit more, and we'll see a change in the future, hopefully. Thank you.
Councillor Wall, you're next.
Hey, thanks, Mayor Davis. Still doing a great job over there.
All the way over here in this little corner.
I really have a lot to say about this, but respecting Councillor Vanderstelt's knack for keeping things brief, I have literally received hundreds of complaints about loud vehicles because it's obnoxious. it is intrusive and it's disrespectful for some people. And who else are they going to call? They call the police, they call bylaw, they call their city councillor. There's no reason we can't be respectful of one another. You know what I mean? If it's 3 a.m. in the morning, there's no need to be racing your car down Colburn or Dalhousie with an engine that wakes up anybody who's not a sound sleeper. You know, our family just welcomed our little girl, my whole world, and we get woken up all the time by loud vehicles. So do I think that we should probably investigate doing something and supporting it? Of course I do. Right? I stand with the people who reach out to me to complain about loud vehicles in their neighborhood. But I cannot in good conscience tell somebody who drives a motorcycle that they shouldn't be loud. I think they should be respectful. You can not rev your engine through a residential neighborhood and be like, you can control the sound for the most part on a motorcycle. But people in cars statistically are looking for other cars. They're not looking for cyclists. They're not looking for people on motorcycles. And I mean, that behavior needs to change. I have a feeling this is going to pass, but I'm going to vote against it unless we can amend it. So I have a proposed amendment. I'll wait if there's other speakers in the queue. But essentially, if you're listening and you own an obnoxiously loud vehicle, could you just please be respectful of your neighbors, respectful of other people around you? Like, I mean, the world needs just more respect. We shouldn't have to be here having this conversation. Rules for the sake of rules, they say. So I have an amendment. It's now the time, or you want me to wait?
No, there's still one more speaker. No, two more speakers. You wouldn't mind just waiting?
Yeah.
Good. All right, so we'll go to the next speaker, Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree with what I've heard so far. Outside of speeding, one of the most frequent complaints that I get is about the louder vehicles that have been modified. Even in their own neighborhoods, the frequent flyers, they're reported on because every morning at 5:58, somebody starts to the car. Thank you very much. We see emails, we see posts on Facebook, social media feeds about this on a regular basis. It is it's just simply unkind. I mean, if you got two young kids at home and you're raising your third, it's tough to get babies to sleep sometimes. If you're recuperating at home from illness, you need your sleep. It's absolutely unnecessary to have this kind of application on a car. I mean, you would almost expect them to fill out a special events application form every time they start their car, because the decibels are really high and it's extended period of time that they're running their vehicle, especially in the wintertime. But more than anything else, it's just bad behavior, and it's frustrating because it says nothing about people who work shift work or who desperately need their sleep and can't get it. It says basically, when I'm driving by your house and I have a vehicle that does that, I simply don't care about your well-being. I don't care about your enjoyment of your front yard, your backyard, your side yard, your bedroom, your living room, your kitchen. I mean, you can't find a house these days that is insulated well enough to stop interrupting a work from home scenario when you are attending a meeting online and you know exactly when your neighbor's going to start your car, so you hit mute or you make sure that you don't speak during that time. This is just rude behavior. So in terms of, loud pipes saving lives, they do. There's plenty of motorcycles that run by our property that don't make any noise. I'm grateful for them. They keep themselves safe. But in terms of the cars, it's completely unnecessary and it's just simply rude. So I'll be supporting this well thought out and well written resolution, surprisingly.
All right. Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, you've been waiting patiently, and you're next.
Yeah, first thing, can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. First thing I want to point out is the mover of this resolution spoke earlier about no puns. He's heard the last of all the puns he wants to hear, and then he began to speak about he heard loud and clear at a public meeting. I just want to point that out for a little bit of jocularity there.
Double standard.
Yeah. two parts of this resolution, 2 and 3, speak to decibel levels. The other part speaks to the provincial Bill 132, and Bill 1, I believe it's 132, yes. That Bill 132 speaks to emission controls and changing pipes. I wonder what would happen though we move forward here, what's going to happen for those that already have legally changed pipes, and we changed the regulations and now they said they got to change them back. Secondly, motorcycles do come with pipes that are sufficient and can be sufficient, but and maybe the emission controls aren't. If the emission controls aren't changed there, then they would meet the standard. So I've heard them as well, and I think as others have spoken about, the corridor of 640 West is between Ward 3 and Ward 5. There's 2 apartment buildings there, and I can't help but believe that the sound that you get there is because you get an echoing off 2 apartment buildings. And I know I've heard the complaints as well as the Ward 3 councillors, but there seems to be those that get a kick out of making that echo as loud as possible. I've also heard them when they go into the subways. Some motorcycles go into the subways and they really gun it under the subway because it makes a heck of an echoing sound. And those think that may be a macho thing to do, I guess, or I'm not sure why they do it. But there's ways to be able to ride a motorcycle and not have to make loud noises throughout the neighborhood. When you're going in areas where it's just going to echo, you can still have the motorcycle be safe without doing that. So I'll support this resolution, but it's just asking the province to do something, and whether they will or not, we're here to wait and see, I guess. I'm glad to hear the response from the police department have been cracking down on those. We also need to think about those that are riding in the cars that have the stereo blasted so loud, the windows are booming, and they can't hear anybody. Other cars, pedestrians, anything. So that's all part of the noise that the police need to be clamping down on at the same time. It's not just the outside part of the car making noise. It's the sound of the stereo inside preventing the driver from knowing what's really going on around them. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wall, did you want to put on the floor your amendment?
Yes, thank you. I still have a second speaking opportunity, so I could talk and then propose the amendment. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. So I just want to talk about where this is coming from. So there is already a whole thing in process. So as I understand it, the intent of this is for the corporation of the city of Brantford to support that initiative. So if this passes, then we just support the initiative. All I'm asking for in my amendment is that somewhere, I'm trusting clerk staff to kind of figure it out. I would like to see wording added that just says something along the lines of that whatever does get done isn't done in consultation with professional associations associated with motorcycle riders, so that they have an opportunity to be able to be consulted and have an opinion on how, if they are going to do this, that maybe there's a way for them, I don't necessarily think exempt, but consultation and communication with motorcycle riders should be a part of this, because there is the impression and the understanding that loud motorcycles equates to safety. So if we're talking about taking something away from a particular group of people that have a belief or an understanding or perhaps a fact, then I think that they should be consulted. And all I'm saying is that my amendment would read something along the lines of that the city of Brantford encourages consultation and consideration for motorcycle drivers through professional motorcycle associations. So that's my attempt.
Okay, I'm gonna make a suggestion too. And in some ways, your amendment, I might rule it out of order, in the sense that it runs contrary to certain provisions of the substantive provisions of this resolution, 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, I think you can make it work if you'd be a little more specific. And I'm going to suggest to you this. The resolution says, 1, that we urge the province of Ontario to expedite the proclamation of section 75.1, right? And you don't consult when you're doing a proclamation. You just go ahead and do it. The Constitution's already been done. There's 3 that says the province of Ontario requests to provide funding for police services. That's fine. And that 4 is a copy of the motion be sent to the Honorable Karen Maloney. However, there's 2 which talks about the Ministry of Transportation be requested to set a maximum decibel account. So it's not proclaiming legislation. I think that's where you want it. And it would be perhaps something to the effect that, and in setting the decibel count, they consultation be encouraged with motorcycle associations, that sort of thing. I think that's where you want to put it. So I can rule it in order.
Within.
Yeah.
That's the city of Ajax's resolution.
I know, so you're amending.
Amending their resolution. Doesn't make sense.
Well, you can do it in the, now therefore be it resolved. So it's, yeah, you could do it there. It's the second last whereas. But that'd be the intent.
Just seeking some advice from our.
I'm trying to give you that advice. Maybe it's not the best, but
I appreciate, I'm
trying to help out. So I think where you want it is where it says now therefore be it resolved. And that says supports the low resolution setting a maximum decibel count. I think you want it in there, right?
That it include consultation with motorcycle.
Correct.
So yes, motorcycle drivers
That's where you want it.
associations and perhaps the ministry, the people who give out the motorcycle licenses.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Transportation.
So I think that's what you should, I think I'm going to recommend respectfully as the chair of this portion that you do that, and I'll rule it in order. And Chris, have you got that?
Through the chair, yes, I have.
Okay, so it's in order.
So my seconder is Councillor Sakola.
Yes.
And then speaking to the amendment.
Go ahead.
Communication and consultation is always the way forward, especially for something that's as important as road safety. We do need to do something about the noise, but we also need to ensure that motorcycle enthusiasts are safe on the road. And I think consultation and communication is the best way to make sure that their voices are heard loud and clear by the powers that be. So I hope that I can see support.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Councillor McCurry, then Councillor Martin.
Mayor, thank you. I could support it if the amendment simply specified that the province be urged to consult with the public. And I'll elaborate on that, Mayor. Manufacturers of Hondas, Harley Davidsons, and the type of motorcycle that my son-in-law drives, which is colloquially referred to as something that I won't repeat here. I would think the manufacturer should know best what sort of equipment to install on a motorcycle to ensure that their buyers and their consumers are protected. I don't think folks have to go out and buy upgraded brakes. They don't have to buy upgraded steering. They don't have to buy upgraded oil systems. The manufacturers build a product that's safe and approved by Canada, America, countries, right? So I can appreciate the concern that some folks have. Certainly, you know, if you've got relatives that ride them, family members that ride them, I don't think, I'm not sure about supporting the enjoyment of noisy mufflers simply on the face of it, or because you owned a car once that had a lousy muffler. So I can certainly embrace public consultation, but if you're going to consult the public, it shouldn't just be one segment of the groups, right? We should do what we're doing here tonight and talk fully on the issue. And that includes consulting the people that live at, you know, noisy intersections here in Toronto. I heard from a guy over the weekend who lives in the Walker building downtown, Colborne and Queen. He says it's just impossible to sleep down there because people just want to make noise. And it's all about, look at me, you know, listen to me. Look at me. I can wake you guys up. No reason for it whatsoever. So if the mover of the amendment would like to just restrict the amendment to consult with the public, I'm happy to support that. But otherwise, I can't see supporting a consultation with one segment that, you know, might be segregated from another.
Yeah, Councillor, I'll get back to you, but we'll go to Councillor Martin next.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this unless it's changed as well. It's interesting that some people think that you need to be heard to be safe on a motorcycle. But why is it only Harley Davidson riders think that way? Honda riders, Yamaha riders, Suzuki riders, BMW riders, you see very few of those with modified muffler systems. Some of them enjoy a nice quiet ride. And as someone who suffers from tinnitus from years of noisy airplanes before hearing protection was standard in aircraft, years of listening to sirens as in the truck that I'm riding in or driving or captain of, encouraging these people to reestablish the exhaust system the way it was meant by the manufacturer also helps protect their hearing, and hopefully will result in them suffering less tinnitus when they get to be my age. So it's as much doing a service for these people as it is everyone else that they're bothering, and it makes me wonder why only one brand of motorcycle feel you need to make noise to be noticed. Others don't. So I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Sakola.
I'll begin with, I think it's a little presumptuous to say that only Harley Davidson drivers are loud. That's insane. And I believe the term councillor, those little, I can't say the word either, but the little bikes are quite loud to begin with. And Councillor McCurry is right. Loud motorcycles are saying, look at me, as in, please don't kill me when you switch lanes without looking. So you're absolutely correct. We are wanting to be noticed, and that's a good thing. As far as public consultation is always great, but I think in this case, you don't know what you don't know. And what you don't know is what it's like to be on a motorcycle and have a car switch lanes and see your life flash before your eyes. So I don't think any of us here can accurately speak to, well, maybe Mayor Davis can actually, can actually speak to what it's like and why being heard is beneficial. And on that note, Ford, I would just like to point out, Ford makes a stock muffler that would destroy the allowance here on the decibel, and it's completely stock. So we also cannot say that a company should know what they need to put on their vehicles to satisfy the public. So that is a fact. Ford does make a stock muffler that you can get from the dealership on your brand new car that will destroy 80 decibels. So take that into consideration when you're making this decision. All we're asking for is that the motorcyclists here in Ontario are heard, and that we can keep them safe on the road, along with, making sure our babies can sleep at night. There's got to be some type of compromise that can be found here. Thank you.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to support anything that includes motorbikes. We've lived with motorbikes for decades, many decades. And it's only recently that modified mufflers on cars has become a new phenomenon. And there are more of them. They're louder, they're faster, they're wannabe Ferraris and make a nuisance of themselves. I know I've read through the Ajax resolution, and it does not include motorcycles. And I don't believe ours should either. I can just imagine somebody that spent, $50,000, $60,000 on a new Harley, brings it home and finds out, oh, I got to change the mufflers because they're too loud. Gosh knows it'll be a few $1,000s, I would think. So I think let's focus on the cars at this point. And if we need to do something with bikes at a later date, which I doubt, then let's address it later rather than now. Thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, I'll be supporting the amendment. It's actually traditional for the province, Ministry of Transportation, to engage with CMA, CDMG. That's normal. And with the manufacturers and with the aftermarket manufacturers, that's standard. So maybe it's a reminder so that's not overlooked based on this resolution, but that is actually, it should not be unusual for a government to engage with those that make the product and why they make the product and what products are acceptable and useful. So some misnomers out there. I've been a motorcyclist for 50 years. I've had one Harley. The rest have all been everything but, and there's many different reasons that one might change an exhaust. Back in the day, it was because they would rot off in a matter of months. So you were always buying something new and then new again. But yeah, consulting is a good thing. Consulting with the public's a good thing. I don't think there's a problem with having specific language to engage with the manufacturing industry. So I hope that we can support this and then we can just move forward as a whole.
Okay, Councillor Wall Councillor McCurry, did you want to speak to the amendment? No, you've already spoken. I'm going to let Councillor Wall go next.
I think you might have written that down wrong, Mayor.
I didn't write it down wrong. I'm never wrong. Councillor Wall.
It sounds like we kind of have a consensus on what we're trying to look at, but that some councillors may feel more comfortable with the changing of the wording. So I don't want to amend my own amendment. So I'm hoping it might be friendly, but I'm thinking something along the lines of where I put consult with, that it would include public consultation, including but not limited to stakeholders, motorcyclists, the Ministry of Transportation. The included but limited to could just go on and on forever. But essentially, public consultation, including but not limited to motorcycle manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, the Ministry of Transportation, CMA, etc. Essentially, public. Let me explain. It is imperative to me that motorcyclists know that they are going to have an opportunity to be heard, which is why I believe it's so important that that is included. But public consultation is always the way forward, not necessarily just one subsect of the population. So I hope that that amendment could be considered friendly and suffices to see this pass so that we can consider the safety of everyone.
That's friendly.
So just so I understand, so you want, it'll be public consultation with all and various interested parties and organizations, including motorcycle associations. Is that it?
I think the incredible deputy clerk has it.
Through the chair, I will tomorrow when I review the tape.
All right, let's move this along. Anybody else want to speak to this amendment? Councillor
McCurry. Mr. Chair, I wonder if you could remind me if we're speaking to an amendment to an amendment.
No, this is the way I see it. So there was a friendly, we just heard the friendly, kind of a recalibration of it. But it is an amendment to your resolution.
So Councillor Wall is amending the resolution sponsored by he and Councillor Sakola.
Correct. They just made a friendly amendment to their amendment, further defining it.
As I said, I think I could consider a friendly amendment one that suggests consultation with stakeholders. I think we're a bit wordy with respect to what we're saying. And although we're trying to be all encompassing, no doubt we're leaving somebody out. So let me suggest to the mover and seconder that they abbreviate that simply to consult with stakeholders, which would include everybody.
I think the seconder is saying no. I think their change in wording was pretty comprehensive, but I'm seeing the seconder shaking her head. So duly noted. Anything else, Councillor
McCurry? Yes. Thank you, Mayor, for asking. Thank you for asking. I wasn't going to to go on at length, but I'm sure Councillor Vanderstelt will have a word with you afterwards for offering me the opportunity. So, no one's talking about putting anybody at risk here, okay? And nobody's going after motorcyclists. And, the consultation piece, I think, is appropriate. But let's, I look at what Councillor Carpenter said, and I look at what others have said. This is a big issue for us, right? And it's important that we deal with it. And if we have to amend the dickens out of it to make sure that this catches the attention of the province, so I'm okay with that. I do believe that the Ford muffler is an aftermarket modification made by the Roush organization, which is certainly a subcontractor to the Ford Motor Company. And I know a friend of mine has owned those cars, and they are quite loud. Let's just proceed on. If the amendment passes, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine. But what's important at the end of the day is, like so much else we do in this room and in this building, Mayor, that we make the right decision based on the input of the 11 of us and our professional staffs. So I have faith that we will accomplish this by the end of the night, which for Councillor Vanderstelt apparently can't come anytime too soon.
All right, so I think we've had, looks like, Councillor Sloss.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to this, Mr. Mayor, and we've spoken on it at length about something that the province is going to do what the province is going to do. And we're sitting here trying to wordsmith this thing so that they're going to do it right. And I think anybody with any sense of what goes on in Toronto realizes that they're going to do what they want to do. We can spend 20 hours reconfiguring this. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I think we're saying is it's noisy out there. Please do something. And I think that's what they will do. At least I hope that's what they will do. But to try and wordsmith it and direct them in a specific direction, doing specific things, good luck with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Okay, let's call the vote. Deputy Clerk, on the amendment.
The amendment to item 8.1 carries on a recorded vote of 7-4. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillor Santosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Sakola, Mayor Davis. Members opposed: Councillors Vanderstelt, Sless, Martin, and Nutley.
All right, any discussion on the resolution as amended? Councillor McCreary.
Mayor, thank you. That certainly was a spirited discussion, and there were two sides to it. But I would implore everybody having some modicum of success tonight to move this forward, that we have, I think, something we can all agree on now. And as usual, in this room, things settle out the way they should. So I look forward to a unanimous vote, not predicting, but hoping. Thank you.
All right, we'll call the vote. Mr. Deputy Clerk, please.
Item 8.1 as amended carries on a recorded vote of 10-1. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Sless, Martin, and Tosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Mayor Davis. Members opposed: Councillor Sakola.
All right, let's move on to the second resolution of this evening, which I'll also chair because it also is being brought forward by Councillor McCreary. 8.2. Councillor McCreary, you have the floor.
Mayor, thank you very much. I'm the mover. Councillor Martin is the seconder. What we have before us is a resolution for us to review the rules regarding notices of motion. The resolution actually is going to read that staff be directed to consult and conduct a review of rules around notices of motion. And our subcommittee, which was entitled the Meeting Process Review Task Force, did yeoman work these many months ago and brought forward a set of recommendations to this council to improve upon and facilitate better meetings and facilitate better use of time. I think we boo-booed when we created the new rules around notice of motion because it tends to lengthen the amount of time that it sometimes takes to get here. We've seen the need to do the cumbersome process of waiving the rules to introduce notices of motion. And I think it's probably appropriate that we have another look at this. And we'll ask clerk staff to take a quick look and have a chat with perhaps the chair and vice chair of that committee, and maybe get the opinions of members of council and some other staff with respect to having a look at perhaps revisiting the way we used to do that, and perhaps having a look at ways we can modify that change that we made. So I would hope that everybody can support this. Again, maybe we made a mistake, but let's have a review and see if there's a better way to do it. Thank you.
Just so I understand, your motion is to waive the rules to bring a resolution to the effect of reviewing rules on the notice of motion. I've got that straight?
What's before you tonight? What's before you tonight, Mayor, is a resolution, which is entitled 8.2.
Yep.
And if you'll notice, somewhere up above there, it says resolutions, and then that comes later. So it is a resolution before us tonight. And what
all right, I'm going to rule it out of order. It lacks specificity. I'm reading it. I don't know what it says other than it reads like a title. So I don't think that, with all due respect, that the resolution has been properly worded. It doesn't have a subject, doesn't have a predicate. It doesn't set out exactly what's being done other than really what is a title. It's very confusing and probably demonstrates why we do have rules around notices of motion. So I'm ruling it out of order.
Mayor, I think that's an inappropriate ruling. And what I will say to you is that the verbal wording that I gave is in fact an amendment which is being introduced tonight by Councillor Martin and I. And the amendment would be to the title of that, which you call the title, but which was a very brief resolution. And the amendment says that staff be directed to consult and to conduct a review of rules around notice of motion. So I think the mayor has misunderstood what's before us tonight. And we have in fact introduced what's now a fully fledged resolution.
So I take it you're challenging my ruling. And
no, I'm not. I'm simply saying that the mayor has failed to recognize that what we have before us is an amendment to that thing that's introduced by Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor McCreary. I've ruled as a chair, I've ruled that your resolution is out of order. You've challenged this. And so I now believe Mr. Gauthier now goes to a vote. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Carpenter. Were you calling a further point of order?
No, the point of order was there was debate happening to a challenge before the challenge was called. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're not going to debate it. I've ruled, you're challenging it, and I would suggest the appropriate procedure then as we put it to vote.
I can't say as I verbalized a challenge. I simply pointed out that the mayor has failed to recognize the fact that there's an amendment that's been introduced.
Yeah, I'm ruling it out of, anyways, Mr. Clerk, if you please put it to vote. You just clarify what yes means and what no means.
Through the chair, the motion that's before the committee is that the ruling of the chair be sustained. If members of the committee are in agreement of the mayor's ruling, vote yes. If members of the committee are not, vote no. A tie vote will also sustain the decision of the chair. The motion, the appeal for the sustaining of the chair's decision carries. So that means that the decision of the mayor is sustained. Members of the committee voting in favor as follows: Councillors Vanderstout, Antosky, Van Tobor, Carpenter, Utley, Sakola, Mayor Davis. Members opposed: Councillor Martin, Wall, and McCreary.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary, for turning the chair over to me to be able to exercise the truly appropriate functions of a chair. And I look forward to seeing another notice of motion sometime in the future. So back to you, Councillor McCreary.
Mayor, thank you. And I'll recognize your comment by saying we all make mistakes, and I forgive you for the mistake you have made this evening, Mayor. I'm sure you'll endeavor to do better in future. And of course, The mayor and I are exchanging jovial glances at one another because we are all friends here and we all work to the same purpose, even though we quite often disagree because the mayor can sometimes be wrong. So
That's true.
we have
Sometimes I
no
can be wrong.
notices of motion, and I would like to say thank you all for being with us tonight. We are adjourned.